This is Film Focus with Emily Cook.
Welcome to the 6th episode of Film Focus, the May edition. In this episode, I'll be joined by my co-host Sarah and we'll discuss new releases Captain America Civil War and Florence Foster Jenkins. Our special guest joining us a little later is Director Jim Gillespie, most well known for his 1997 film I Know What You Did Last Summer, but we'll be speaking to him about his latest film Takedown, which I worked with him on. We'll also let you know of any filmmaking opportunities and events on the horizon, and as if that wasn't enough, we're going to be discussing the importance of locations in films, particularly how forests are used in horror and thrillers to increase tension. And we'll share our top 5 forests of fear. I'm joined once again by our resident film fan Sarah, who watches at least 7 feature films a week. She'll be updating us on her 500 film challenge a little later. Hello Sarah.
Hi Emily, how you doing?
I'm wonderful, thank you. It's so great that the sun is finally out. Maybe spring is here. Since our last show, we're over the moon to have received a lot of love on our podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much for your comments and wonderful 5-star ratings. It makes all of this worthwhile knowing you're enjoying these episodes.
And if you haven't subscribed to the official podcast yet, simply search for Film Focus on iTunes and all of our latest episodes will be delivered directly to your handset or smartphone. Simple. Anyway, back to the show.
We're discussing our featured films this week from the Vibrant Members Bar at the Picture House Central, where we've just had the pleasure of seeing Florence Foster Jenkins.
Music is my life.
Florence Foster Jenkins is a British-French biographical comedy drama and is the latest film from director Stephen Frears, written by Nicholas Martin. The film stars Meryl Streep as Florence Foster Jenkins, a New York heiress who becomes an opera singer notorious for her lack of singing skills. Hugh Grant plays her craftier husband and manager, who is clearly very devoted to her. We've literally just seen this movie a couple of minutes ago. Sarah, what did you think of it?
There was a beautiful relationship between Florence and her husband, no doubt. I found it really hard to sympathise with a really well-off woman. She was a rich underdog, if you will. Yeah. She had dreams, and everybody deserves to have dreams, but
in cinema we're actually really used to sympathising with the underdog, and we don't deal with privilege very well as an audience.
I think that's exactly true, and maybe I might be guilty of that. I thought it was really funny also, but it kind of ran out of steam for me by the end. I found it hard to stay invested.
I can see what you mean. I thought that it was a wonderful celebration of eccentricity. I think we don't see that on screen enough. The relationship between herself and her husband, played by Hugh Grant. Yeah. I thought that was very, very touching, and it was beautiful. It could have easily been corny, but there were several places where I actually felt very emotional.
Yeah, sure.
And also the production design I thought was exquisite. The period piece was set in 1942 to 44, and the production designer was Alan MacDonald, and it's one of my favourite eras to see on screen.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. I mean, the set design, the costume design was very, very believable, very beautiful. I totally agree.
But like I say, I actually really, really enjoyed it, and I thought it was lovely, perhaps because we were watching in London, but there was a round of applause at the end. And I think that's a wonderful thing, that we can celebrate cinema in that way, and that the whole cinema, bar a few, were clapping at the end. I'm not going to say whether you clapped or not. The latest film from Marvel Studios, Captain America Civil War, directed by the Russo brothers, picks up where the Avengers Age of Ultron left off, as Steve Rogers leads a new team of Avengers in their continued efforts to safeguard humanity. After another international incident involving the Avengers results in collateral damage, political pressure mounts to install a system of accountability and a governing body to determine when to enlist the services of the team. The new status quo fractures the Avengers while they try to protect the world from the new and nefarious villain. The film stars Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans. What did you make of it, Sarah?
I thought that the biggest surprise for me was the plot. There were so many things that I just was open-mouthed at, in terms of coming from other Marvel comic movies into this one. I was absolutely dumbfounded and shocked by a lot that happened.
In a good way?
In a great way, yeah. Also, the relationships between the characters and the difficult position that the conflict put them in, I just found that to be really compelling and interesting to watch.
I think so, and I think as well there are a few familiar characters that pop up who you might not be expecting, and we always get joy out of those appearances, I think, as viewers.
Yeah, definitely. But also completely brand new faces are thrown into that mix, and I just find that really, really interesting. There's also 2 scenes to watch out for. I think most comic book fans will always stay past the first end credits, just to see what's going to be unveiled. There are 2 scenes that these guys need to look out for.
Great. Well, make sure you all stay to the end if you go and see it. I was impressed by how highly polished and well executed the action scenes were. The fight sequences were excellently choreographed and seamlessly edited together. It can be quite disorientating with fight scenes sometimes for them to make sense, because obviously the editing has to reflect the movement, and it's all shot out of sequence, and I thought they did really well with that. I enjoyed the way the film didn't take itself too seriously. That was the thing, it was actually funny, because I've been to see some films recently which have tried to be funny, Batman versus Superman, and the lines have just fallen flat, but the whole cinema were laughing their heads off in this film. I found it genuinely funny and entertaining, and I felt if I was to say something negative about it, I felt the pacing suffered slightly about 2/3 of the way through, but that soon picked up in the last third.
But then at the same time, when the second you feel a little bit like you're running out of steam, something amazing happens, and then it brings you right back up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think after seeing Batman versus Superman and not enjoying it so much, I didn't have very high hopes for Captain America Civil War, but I was pleasantly surprised by it.
You're a Marvel versus the DC, definitely.
There you go. Here at Film Focus, we love to speak with special individuals from the world of television and film, and this episode is no exception. This week we're focusing on feature film director Jim Gillespie, most well known for his 1997 film I Know What You Did Last Summer, which starred Sarah Michelle Gellar and Jennifer Love Hewitt. I caught up with him to discuss his latest feature, Takedown, which I worked with him on. We also discussed what it was like shooting on the Isle of Man, the rise of the teenager in Rebel Without a Cause, and what it is that makes the Isle of Man Film Festival so special. So Jim, it was lovely to have you here on the Isle of Man, and it was great obviously working with you on the film. I'm really interested if you could explain as a director what Takedown means to you.
That's a difficult question, because I think any film for a filmmaker comes from within, so I don't really analyse it in that way. I can only talk about the fact that for me the most important thing is that the audience is entertained by it. I don't make films for me. I make films hopefully that play to an audience. And so when I'm editing them, I'm always conscious that it's how other people are going to perceive the film, not me. It has to filter through me, but that's the primary thing. And Takedown, I think, is a film that at its core it's an emotional journey for the characters at the centre of it. It does have a high concept, sort of wrapping itself around that. But the core of it is a real drama about real people. That's the critical factor, and I think the actors bring that to life.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Obviously, Sarah Black, the producer, her husband wrote the script. What was it when he presented the script to you that kind of got you excited, got you on board, and made you think, I want to do this?
Well, I think, the first read of the script, there were 2 things that I liked. One was it does have a very straightforward, high concept at its core. A bunch of rich kids go to a last chance saloon in a remote island and they get kidnapped by the bad guys. It's a kidnapper's paradise. And that was very simple. And Sandy Ignon wrote Ransom, which had a very similar high concept central idea. But the thing that I liked more than that was that this group of late teen, early 20s felt to me like they were on a journey that was universal, that was very understandable, and that has really been neglected in the cinema. I know there's YA films out there, but they do it in a much more, I think, commercial way. And I felt that this film was a little bit of a throwback to films from the 1950s when teen movies really started.
Yeah, well, that was because of obviously like Rebel Without a Cause and all those films, and it was a very interesting period of time, because I think the idea was that most of the fathers had gone off to fight in the war, and then a whole generation were growing up without father figures, so that was the first time that even teenagers emerged. So then
for sure, and I think the thing about Rebel Without a Cause that is similar to this film, it's not in terms of plot and all those things, but the idea that the so-called kids in Rebel Without a Cause are more adult than the adults, and that's very overtly portrayed, and there's a very famous scene with Jim Backus dressed up in a pinafore, and Jim Stark, the James Dean character, looks at his father like he's the adult. And in our film, I think that the journey that the characters take is more adult than how we see their parents portrayed.
And they've got better morals as well than the parents.
Well, they do,
Arguably.
because I think that that's part of that growing up journey. We all grew up, and I think as adults and parents, we forget that the things that our children are going through is the same journey that we went through. And parents sometimes, I know myself, you want them to somehow just be adult. In actual fact, without going through that process, they can't be adult. They have to discover all of those responsibilities and morals for themselves. They can't just be imposed.
Yeah. So half the film was shot in the Isle of Man and half the film was shot in Wales. What was the most special moment and unique part about filming in the Isle of Man?
But in terms of the benefits, then I found that the people here were very film friendly. But that the crew, certainly from my experience, worked super hard. They were good humoured. I got on with everybody, I think, on the crew, even though I can shout from time to time. I never felt less than 100% supported. For that, I have to thank everyone here. Just a love and a passion of going to work. And sometimes when you're working on feature films in a kind of more traditional studio setting in London or Los Angeles or wherever, it's a job, and it feels less that here. You feel that people are actually, they want to make the film.
It's a passion as well, I think. Yeah. Very quickly, you mentioned before that you really like small film festivals. Why is that? And is there anything about the Isle of Man Film Festival that you note as being different?
I think small film festivals like the Isle of Man Festival are critical, and there's lots of them around the world. And for me, they're just more about the purity of cinema. It's not about a big show. It's not about what stars you saw walking up and down the street. It's not about executives swanning it around. It's just about film. It's about people who want to go and watch films. It's not about anything else. And I think that the Isle of Man Festival, if it continues to progress, could build itself a little niche thing, because it does have a great little atmosphere.
Lovely, and we're really delighted to have you here for the festival, so thank you very much for coming over.
Delighted to be here.
It was great to hear an experienced director talk about what drives him, I thought. He seems so down to earth as well, considering he's worked with Sylvester Stallone, Tom Berenger, Chris Christopherson in the past. I just can't imagine what it would be like.
He's really
Star
lovely
quality.
He's lovely, but he's a really nice guy. So each episode we discuss a film genre, theme or topic, and with the seasons shifting, the increase in daylight and the fact that we're all now spending more time outside, we thought we'd pull our focus to the power of location in feature films. In order to create the most believable on-screen worlds, films utilise a number of key elements, including computer-generated imagery, set design and studio builds, but perhaps the most important is the effective use of location. Films that rely heavily on a few key natural locations are able to keep costs down as they reduce the need for set dressing and costly studio rental fees. A natural location that we see appearing time and time again in lower budget films is that of the forest. Low and medium budget thrillers and horror films in particular make use of woodland in their on-screen worlds. The innate characteristics and physical benefits offered by the forest are a real gift to the filmmaker. As far back as Shakespeare's day, literature has presented the woods as a place of mystery, trickery, evil and supernatural events. We see it again in the 19th century with the German fairy tales of the Grimm brothers, for instance in Hansel and Gretel, and the references continue right up into the present day with the likes of the 2004 film Into the Woods and the aptly titled The Forest in 2016. Physically, once under the canopy of the trees, our protagonists find themselves trapped, disorientated and confused within a repetitive landscape of untamed, unruly wilderness. In the most basic sense, the trees and their darkness offer places for the nefarious characters to hide and shelter so that their deeds can be concealed. So now we invite you to follow us, breadcrumbs at the ready, into the deep dark forest as we explore our top 5 examples of when forests have been utilised effectively to generate a sense of fear and tension within a film.
Now you're probably wondering how I ended up in a state like this, and how a corporate jolly turned into the sort of tear-up you don't see in the office every day.
Severance, directed by Christopher Smith, is a British comedy horror thriller that tells the story of a group of sales representatives who, while on a team-building weekend in a remote cabin in the forests of Eastern Europe, become the victims of a group of crazed killers who will stop at nothing to see them dead. The film boasts an all-star cast, including Toby Stephens, Danny Dyer, Claudie Blakely, Andy Nyman, Babu Cisse, Tim McInnery, Laura Harris and David Gilman.
And why did you pick this one, Emily?
Well, with a relatively low budget of an estimated $5 million, I thought the film made great use of the dramatic and atmospheric forests of the Isle of Man, which is where most of the on-screen action takes place. Arguably, the film is rather formulaic and not everyone's cup of tea. No doubt Danny Dye's involvement might put some audiences off, but I found the film's depiction of location presented an effective sense of impending doom, and an innocent situation very quickly becomes something rather more sinister. The chase scenes through the trees I thought were particularly well shot.
I thought it was really good fun, actually. I watched it years ago and I just remember really liking it at the time. Did you find out any trivia about it?
Well, yes, hilariously, I don't know why I do find it hilarious, but Danny Dye spent 10 weeks toning up in the gym prior to the shooting, which is quite funny because I don't remember seeing his torso in the film.
I was going to say, was it for that reason?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Hey, Scotty, what's this place like anyway?
Well, the guy that's renting it says it's an old place. A little run down.
The first film I
it's right
chose
up
was
in
The
mountains.
Evil Dead, which is a 1981 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Sam Raimi and exec produced by Raimi and Bruce Campbell, who also stars alongside Ellen Sandweiss and Betsy Baker. The film focuses on 5 college students vacationing in an isolated cabin in a remote wooded area. After they find an audio tape that releases a legion of demons and spirits, members of the group suffer from demonic possession, leading to increasingly gory mayhem.
So why did you select this film, Sarah?
I think it's a bit of an obvious one to choose, to be honest, but it absolutely had to be done for this kind of theme. Even though a lot of the action takes place inside the cabin, the forest definitely plays an integral part to the storyline. The thick expanse of trees hem the cabin in, adding to the secluded atmosphere kind of overall. As anyone who's seen the original movie will know, and I know there's lots of people out there, there's a really unforgettable and quite harrowing scene that takes place in the woods when one of the friends leaves the cabin.
That's quite interesting how basically you've got a group of college students in a cabin in the woods, and similarly to Severance you have a group of work colleagues who don't get on in a cabin in the woods. So it's kind of a formulaic scenario that seems to be repeated out again and again and again. I mean, we could rattle off loads of films that follow that.
But it's obviously because it's very effective and it works.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's continually happening again and again and again. And I personally don't get bored of it. I kind of like films set in the woods.
Yeah, I think people get enjoyment out of formulas as well because they're familiar. It's like when a pop song comes on and you know all the words. You get enjoyment out of that process of familiarity and knowing what's about to happen. Is there anything about the production of the film that you found interesting?
Well, I was quite surprised that the filming began in 1979 with quite a small cast and crew of only about 37 people. The initial shooting finished in 6 weeks only, but it took 1.5 years to edit the picture. It's no surprise really, it's incredible the way it's been put together. And also Joel Cohen was actually an assistant editor on the movie, one of his first roles.
Oh, fascinating. I can imagine how using forests, actually the editing process takes a long time because you don't have any landmarks within the forest. My next film is Take Down from director Jim Gillespie, who's our special guest on this week's episode. The film focuses on the reckless sons and daughters of international billionaires who have been sent by their frustrated parents to an exclusive tough love boot camp on a remote island where they will be taught the basic survival skills in the hope that it will teach them to take responsibility for their lives. When they're taken hostage and held for $1 billion ransom by a group of sophisticated kidnappers, the young captives suddenly need every ounce of their brief training to survive. The film stars a bevy of gorgeous, talented young cast, including Ed Westwick, Jeremy Sumpter, Phoebe Tompkin, Ashley Walters and Dominic Sherwood. The film's trailer has just surfaced actually, so please watch out online for the film's UK release date later this year.
Why did you choose this one?
I had the pleasure of working on Takedown when it was shot in 2014, so I had first-hand experience of being on location for the shoots. The majority of the lighthouse scenes were shot in Wales, whereas the quarry, cliff face, beach and of course forest scenes were all shot in the Isle of Man. Over the fortnight of shooting, the film shot in several different Manx woodland areas, including Bluff and Solby Glen. The steep plantation floors made for a physically strenuous experience for both the cast and crew and reflect well on screen. The nature of the forest provides several perfect opportunities for ambush scenarios. I thought it was interesting that the woodland sequences in Takedown, as opposed to in Severance, house more action sequences rather than horror.
Yeah.
My interesting bit of trivia about Takedown, linking to last week's industry topic on women filmmakers, is that the producer was actually a woman called Sarah Black, and she's a really lovely woman.
Oh, awesome. Good to see the ladies doing it for themselves.
Exactly, as Beyonce might say.
The next film I chose was Battle Royale which is a Japanese film directed by Kinji Fukasaku, using a screenplay written by his son Kenta, and stars among others Takeshi Kitano, who is probably best known for the TV show Takeshi's Castle.
I love Takeshi's Castle.
Oh, who doesn't?
It got me through my A-levels and probably my GCSEs.
It's just silliness, isn't it?
It's
brilliant. The film tells the story of a junior high school student who is struggling with the suicide of his father and who is forced by the government to compete in a deadly game where the students in his class must fight to the death, with only the sole survivor being allowed to live.
So what was it about the forests in this film that made you select it?
I think it's very similar to films like Takedown or the Hunger Games franchise, but it actually predates all of them. The novel the film was based on was actually published in 1999 and was seen as very controversial at the time, probably obviously because of the government being involved in these decisions and the fact that it's quite horrific what they're making these kids do. The forest setting is actually used both as a sanctuary for the characters and a place where surprise attacks can be staged and traps can be constructed. So the environment is much more functional than atmospheric, in other words. So again, what's similar to what you were saying about Takedown, yeah. I'd say Battle Royale is a beautiful blend of action, horror and thriller, so I definitely urge anyone who's not seen it to check it out. It's brilliant.
Okay. I will do. Do you have any interesting facts about the director of this film?
The director actually celebrated his 70th birthday during the production, but he unfortunately passed away 2 years later during the production of the sequel Battle Royale 2 from 2003, ending a 40-year career in the director's chair.
What a fantastic slate of films to have left behind. My final film is Camera Trap from writer-director Alex Werner. Camera Trap's a natural history documentary-style horror thriller about a British wildlife film unit set in the depths of Central Asia. Using the latest in camera trap technology, 4 filmmakers go on search of a rare Amur snow leopard. What they discover is something far more terrifying than they expected.
This sounds so interesting, this one. Dare I ask why you selected it?
It really is interesting. I worked on the film in 2013, creating all of the DVD extras and the EPK electronic press kit. And this is actually the third film we're focusing on, which was shot in the Isle of Man. The film has the same producer as Severance, Jason Newmark. Unlike Severance and Takedown, however, Camera Trap makes use of the forests at night time, displaying it in a variety of eerie ways. The USP of this film actually is the fact that they use various camera technologies. State-of-the-art infrared cameras, handheld diary cameras. There are parallels there you could draw with the Blair Witch Project in style perhaps. Head cameras, body cameras, GoPros, camera traps which are triggered by movement, and the Starlight camera, which is one that's hung up in trees and gives a bird's eye view.
Oh, I'd never heard of that one.
The use of darkness in conjunction with the camera footage that excludes a great deal of information from the frame plays on the audience's fear of the unknown. It's in Camera Trap that the location of the forest at night really shines. Who knows what's lurking behind the trees?
How can I get hold of the film? Because I'd not heard of it at all before or seen any trailers.
Well, interestingly, it is actually now available on iTunes. I'll include a link over on our blog. If you search for Camera Trap on iTunes, it should come up.
And was there any trivia that you thought the audience might be interested in for this one?
There was so much on this because, I created a production notes document that actually helped sell the film. This is the document that actually goes to Fox, goes to Universal, goes to all the distributors to say, this is what this film is about, and it's a really long document, so I kind of know it backwards, but I thought it was really interesting on a very basic level how they matched up the forests in Nepal, where half the film was shot, with the forests in the Isle of Man.
And you think they wouldn't be able to do that at all because they're so different?
Completely different trees, completely different landscapes, different weather, but it's amazing what the human brain will allow. So they'll cut from one shot of them entering the forest and from behind, and then the shot of them approaching the camera from within the forest. They're completely two different forests. Wow. It's absolutely fascinating.
I definitely want to download that one and check it out just to see how well that's blended, and by the sound of it, it's amazing. So we hope you can see the woods from the trees now. You'll find much more on this topic, including trailers, posters and links to the film on our blog. Links will be in the video and audio file description box.
If you caught our previous episodes, you'll know Sarah has embarked on an exciting journey to watch over 500 films over the next year. That's on average 46 films a month, 9.6 films a week and 1.3 3 feature films a day. So Sarah, can you give us an update on your progress? What number are you up to, and what's your favourite film since we last spoke?
I've managed to upload 180 films so far to YouTube, but I've probably watched about 20 or so more films than that, so I'm really, really proud of my progress.
You should be.
There's still a long way to go though. I can't believe I'm not even halfway through and I feel like I've watched 10,000 films. My favourite film that I've watched recently though would have to be Hardcore Henry.
Hello, Henry.
I know you were talking earlier about GoPro headsets. The whole film is filmed through a GoPro. So you get a first-person perspective, and it's one of the best action films I've ever seen, genuinely.
The kind of like Peep Show.
And the rest of it, of course, yeah. It really immerses you in Henry's world, and it has really interesting and original plot too. But I also have to mention Midnight Special, because that is just unbelievable. Anybody who likes E.T. or Steven Spielberg-y alien type stuff with a modern twist to it, I think definitely go and see Midnight Special. It's really beautiful.
Excellent. I'll have to check them out, and also Hardcore Henry really sounds quite a creative film, so I'd like to look at that. If you'd like to follow Sarah's progress, go over to YouTube and search for Sarah 500 Film Challenge. We'll include a link on our blog page, realvision.wordpress.com, and that's real with 2 E's. There's also a place to comment and suggest films for her to watch. I'm enjoying following your journey, Sarah, but can I suggest one now for you to watch?
Yes, you certainly can.
I'd like you to watch Triangle.
Yes, absolutely. What's it about?
So it's actually from the same producer of Severance and of Camera Trap, Jason Newmark, and that's how I came across it. I watched it then, and it was out when I was working at Blockbusters about 8 years ago. Those were the days. A group of young attractive people go on a boating trip. It's one of those films where you have kind of temporal fragmentation of the narrative, where sequences are repeated, you see things from different people's views, and you discover more as the characters discover more. And it is quite a frightening film. But I've also heard people say negative things about it, so I'd be interested to know if you can see the plot holes that are there.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah. It'll go onto the list. I want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to everyone who's been following my progress on the challenge, and especially to all of my lovely subscribers for their comments. But changing the subject from my challenge to the Isle of Man, is there anything going on that the listeners need to be aware of?
It's been a busy month for the organisers of the Isle of Man Film Festival, as plans are now in full force for this year's event. In its 5th year, the festival is growing in popularity, and the team are delighted that BBC film reviewer Mark Kermode is back on board to host the long weekend schedule that will take place on the 8th to the 11th of September. Pinewood and PokerStars are also back to sponsor the festival, and Manx Radio is their new media partner, which will promote more community involvement. The International Short Film Competition has opened for submissions now, and there are cash prizes for winners of each of the categories of fiction, comedy, documentary and animation. Sarah, filmmakers can win up to £1,000 and a trip to the Isle of Man for the festival. That's pretty cool.
I wish I was a filmmaker so I could enter something, to be totally honest, because that is awesome.
It is.
It's a really nice package.
Regular updates will be made available on the website at isleofmanfilmfestival.com and on the Facebook page if you search for Isle of Man Film Festival. In the meantime, preparations are being made for the next wave of Man in Shorts workshops. That's the indie production scheme on the island, and the associated short films are all in pre-prep stage ahead of their summer shoots. For more information on the Isle of Man Film Festival and Man in Shorts, please do contact Zoe at isleofmanfilmfestival.com.
So thank you for joining us for our 6th ever episode of Film Focus. It's been great fun.
It has. Please check out the links in the audio and video description below for more from Film Focus. You'll be able to find a blog post of this episode over on our site featuring related links, movie posters, trailers and a summary of our thoughts this week. There's also a space for you to leave your comments and have your say. We'd love to hear from you. Also a little reminder that Film Focus is now available on iTunes. So do search for Film Focus on your podcast app. We'll be back soon with both more from Sarah and myself. We hope you'll join us then.
So that's a wrap on this week's episode.
If you'd like to discover more, find us on Facebook.
Simply search for Film Focus.
For screenings, reviews and filmmaking opportunities right here in the Isle of Man.
Thanks for listening to Film Focus with Emily Cook. Happy movie going!